And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. It's Friday, November 8th, week 10, and we have a jam-packed show for you today. We got previews coming out the wazoo and a fun recap of Thursday Night Football coming right at you today. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar, and I'm telling you, folks, it's time to believe in the Oakland Raiders. As you can tell by the title of this episode, I am in love with the Oakland Raiders right now. I am quite smitten. That's a stark contrast to where I was when they hired John Gruden. I thought it was a terrible hire at the time, but I've come around and I am riding the Raiders bandwagon pretty hardcore. So with that introduction, let's get into a recap of last night's game. If you didn't watch it, you missed a pretty fun game. Raiders beat the Chargers 26-24. Last primetime game in Oakland. Raiders improved to 5-4 on the season and are set up in really great position to for a playoff spot. In all seriousness, they won 2 straight, and the Chargers fall to 4-6, and it just feels like that was kind of the write-off that they were waiting for the Chargers. That kind of just put the nail in the coffin for their season. Raiders rookie running back Josh Jacobs punched in an 18-yard touchdown run with 1:06 left in the game for the Raiders to take a 2-point lead at 26-24. And you're thinking, all right, Raiders are about to, basically just run down the clock and, take this lead. And Raiders kicker shanked the extra points, and now it's just a 2-point game, so all the Chargers have to do is get in field goal range. Well, Phillip Rivers in the offense comes back out, and they just can't get anything going. The offensive line can't block anybody the entire night, and Phillip was just off. It was just a very ugly-looking 2-minute drive, and he gets picked off at the end, and the Raiders hold on to win it. It was a truly fun game, and it was probably the best Raiders defensive performance we've seen all season long. In all seriousness, they had 5 sacks in this game, 3 interceptions. One of those was returned for a touchdown. And a lot of the pressure they got on Phillip Rivers was coming from their rookies. Max Crosby, if I remember correctly, led the team in pressures. He had 10 last night, the 4th-round draft pick from Eastern Michigan University, which is where I attend. I actually covered his pro day. And I said it on Twitter last night. He was an absolute steal in the 4th round of the draft, and he is proving to be so. Max Crosby had a sack last night and 1.5 tackles for losses. But I think the very major point for Oakland on defense was Clelin Ferrell. Their other 1st-round draft pick from this past draft. They took him 4th overall, and a lot of people said it was a reach and said they probably could have gotten him much later in the draft. And he's kind of struggled, so far this season. He only had 1 sack coming into last night. Well, he had his undoubtedly best game as a pro. He had 2.5 sacks, 2.5 tackles for losses, and was really dominating down there with Max Crosby. And Eric Harris, another Raiders defender, not a rookie, but caught 2 of those interceptions that Phillip threw. Phillip Rivers, the Chargers quarterback, threw 3 on the night. Harris caught 2 of them. Could have had more if it wasn't for Raiders penalties. But it was a tremendous effort by this Raiders defense where, all season we've said, their defense is the weak point of that team, and that's what's going to hold them back. Well, last night, in all honesty, it might have been the best part of their team. I know their offense played pretty well, but their defense played some incredible football. Despite all the penalties, they had a season-high 12 penalties for like 97 yards. That's what kept a lot of the Chargers' drives moving, was the penalties, but I really think the Raiders defense played phenomenal last night. A lot of the rookies stepping up on this team, not just on defense, but on offense too. Josh Jacobs, the rookie running back. Hunter Renfrow, the rookie wide receiver out of Clemson, was big down the stretch, especially on that last touchdown drive by Raiders. Hunter Renfrow is kind of becoming the go-to guy in big moments for Derek Carr. You could tell he was looking for him. But the rookies on this team have really stepped up and are really leading the way. Crosby, Ferrell, Renfrow, Jacobs. All guys that were taken in this past draft, and they've all been major contributors to the Raiders this season. But I think a lot of credit needs to be given to that Raiders offensive line. They gave up 3 sacks last night to Derek Carr, but you know what? On that last drive, they were amazing. They were perfect, and you know what? They really neutralized not Trent Brown, Bosa for most of this game. Trent Brown made Bosa a non-factor at all, and I said that last week after the Chargers had beat the Packers that they had to show consistency. Melvin Ingram and Bosa had to get to the quarterback more consistently. The Raiders' offensive line, despite injuries, has played amazingly well this year, and it's helped Derek Carr, who's playing some career-best football. The Chargers' main issue, they just couldn't protect Phillip Rivers. They just couldn't do it. I mean, the Raiders were rushing 4 guys all night and were continuing to get pressure the entire night, and Rivers just couldn't settle in. Rivers finished 17 of 31 for 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, like I said, and 5 sacks. The Chargers were looking honestly kind of good in the first half. They had the awful start where they turned the ball over a couple times and the Raiders jumped out to a big lead, but then they battled back and, made it a 3-point game at the half. The Chargers had over 100 yards rushing at halftime. It was starting to look like, the Chargers were going to make a game out of it. And they just kind of fell apart late in the game and found a way to lose. Melvin Gordon, Chargers running back, had his best game so far this year. Looked great. 22 rushes for 108 yards and a touchdown. It just fell apart in the fourth quarter when the Raiders took over. This Raiders team is good. They're 5-4, and I think they deserve some more credit. I think they're a good team. I really do. And they're going to get better as the years go on. All these kids are young right now on this team. Josh Jacobs, I know I've mentioned all their names already. They're good now and are helping this team win now. Imagine what they're going to be in year 3 when they're basically veterans and know what they're doing. Those teams are going to be scary. But for the Chargers, it's just another heartbreaker. They've lost like 5 games. If I remember correctly, 5 of their games have come down to 1 possession. So they're used to losing these close games so far this season, but I think that's reason for optimism. You're right there. If you get a lucky bounce here or there, you could have won those games, but hindsight's 20/20. If Melvin Gordon had been there from the start of the season, maybe the Chargers had won a game or 2, and maybe they'd be a 5-win team by now. But once again, hindsight's 20/20. I just want to mention Derek Carr had a pretty good night, 21 of 31, 218 yards and a touchdown, got sacked 3 times. And Josh Jacobs, Raiders running back, 16 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown, but also 3 catches for 30 yards, so well over 100 total yards on the night. And I think the Chargers are kind of, pushed closer to the back of the line for the AFC West, but keep an eye on the Raiders. I really think they're poised for a playoff run here. You know why? Because there's only 7 weeks left in the NFL season, and the Raiders, are going to play all 7 games. 6 out of the Raiders' next 7 games are against teams that are currently under 500 and have a losing record. Teams like the Broncos, the Jets, the Bengals, just some horrid teams thrown in there. And you got some maybe frisky ones like the Titans also in there. So, and the one team that's above 500 that they have to play is the Chiefs. And the Chargers are thrown in there as well. So, let's say realistically, the Raiders go 5-2 over this 7-game stretch, Say they beat, they only lose to, let's say, the Chiefs and, I don't know, maybe the Chargers in a weird divisional matchup. So they'll be sitting there at the end of the season at a 10-win team, a 10-6 team. I think that's more than enough to get a wild card in the AFC right now. I really like this Raiders team. I really do, and I think they're poised for a wild card run. They just got to beat up these bad teams these next couple weeks. And they're going to have a couple home games in this 7-game stretch, so that's going to help. So just keep an eye on the Raiders. I really like them. I think they're frisky. So that's it for Thursday Night Recap. We're going to get into the preview portion here really quick. We have 6 teams on a bye this week. The Broncos, the Texans, the Jags, New England, Philadelphia, and Washington. So it's kind of a light schedule, so we're going to kind of breeze through some of the early games because they kind of seem a little lopsided. So first up, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Cleveland Browns. 6-2 Bills versus the 2-6 Browns. Browns are riding a 4-game losing streak, and they really need a win. But the good news for Cleveland is this week they get Kareem Hunt back off of suspension. He served his 8-game suspension, and now he's there for their use, I guess. Couldn't have come at a worse time, though. Kareem Hunt's a really good running back. He really is. I just don't know how they're going to use him. The Browns have been at their best when they've, utilized Nick Chubb and have, made him the focal point of their offense. So I don't know how they're going to factor in another bell cow running back like Kareem Hunt. I really don't understand how they're going to work him. I know Freddie Kitchens said that he might even line both of them up in the backfield at the same time, which makes no sense. So it'll be interesting to see what the Browns do with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb this weekend. The Browns are averaging, 19 points a game. That's 25th in the NFL. So I don't know how Kareem Hunt's going to fix that. Maybe he can help with the red zone struggles. I don't know to what effect because it's his first game back, so he's probably a little rusty. But he might help. The only hope the Browns have in this game is to get after Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback. Myles Garrett is number 2 in the league in sacks with 10, and he's first in the NFL with tackles for losses with 11. So get past the offensive line, get to Josh Allen, and hit him. He's got a turnover problem. Make him fumble. Simple as that. It's kind of the Bills' MO to have a couple Josh Allen turnovers in the first couple quarters and then stage a comeback in the second half. So play into the MO as best you can, Cleveland, and, try to stymie a comeback, I guess, would be my advice. This should be a game, in my opinion, though, speaking to the Bills now, that this should be a game that the Bills win handily. On paper, it just reads that way. The Bills are a 6-2 team. They're coming to Cleveland to take on a really down-on-their-luck Browns team that can't get anything going offensively. And the Bills, on paper, statistically have a good defense. So this should be a game that the Bills win handedly. But as we've seen all year long, the Bills struggle against bad teams. They had to stage a fourth quarter comeback against the Bengals, a fourth quarter comeback against the Dolphins. They struggled to put away Washington last week with Dwayne Haskins. I mean, this Bills team has struggled to beat bad teams, and Cleveland's a bad team. So this should be a game that they win handily, but I just have a feeling it's going to come down to the last 5 minutes of the game, and Josh Allen scores 10 points to finally lift the Bills over a bad Browns team. But the Bills have struggled to stop the run the last couple weeks. Adrian Peterson had over 100 yards rushing last week. So Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt could pose a real problem for the Browns. The Browns said that they were going to force feed Odell Beckham Jr. early in this game, and they should. I really think they should. They brought him to town for a reason, and it feels like they've never used him properly. So try to get Odell involved as much as possible. I think the Bills win this game. They should win this game. But if they come out and struggle against this horrifically bad Browns team, my opinion and stock of the Bills falls every week because I trumpeted them for weeks as being this really great defensive team that's going to ride into a wild card. They might ride into a wild card because their schedule is so weak. But they have really got to, look better against these bad teams. And they just haven't done that, the first half of the season. Maybe they turn it around here against this bad Cleveland team. But if they struggle again, this Bills team has the feeling of a team that's going to win like 10 games on a weak schedule, make the wild card round, and then get bounced like 35-10 in the opening game. That's just what they feel like. But I'm going to take the Bills in this one. Like I said last week, Buffalo, bully somebody. Beat up on a bad team. It's really not that hard, Buffalo. It really isn't. Moving on to our next one. We got the Arizona Cardinals, the 3-5-1 Cardinals. Yes, that's their record. I know it's a mouthful. They've lost 2 straight, and they're going to Tampa Bay to take on another down-on-their-luck team, a 2-6 Buccaneers team that has lost 4 straight. So it feels like we ask this question every week before the Buccaneers game. What version of the Bucs are we going to get? The kind that goes shot for shot with MVP candidate Russell Wilson in Seattle? Or the other one that just turns the ball over way too much? Despite being, this 2-6 operation, the Buccaneers are averaging 28.8 points a game. I know, that's stunning. I know. That's fourth best in the NFL. That's behind teams. That's just barely behind teams like Baltimore and New England. That means that when it's on, the Buccaneers offense is really good. When it's on, it's not always on though. This is another matchup of pretty bad defenses though. Tampa Bay has the number 22 overall D with 371.6 yards per game. And the Cardinals have the number 30 overall defense with 407.6 yards per game. So maybe that's good news for Tampa Bay. They're playing this pretty bad defense. And, Seattle last week, when they put up all those points, Seattle didn't have a good defense. Still doesn't. And the Cardinals don't have a good one. But I think the even better news for Tampa Bay is the Cardinals defense doesn't do takeaways. They're one of the worst defenses in the entire league at getting takeaways. They have 7 on the year. That's tied for third worst. That should be really, really great news for Tampa Bay. So maybe Jameis Winston can hold on to the football this week. He only had 1 turnover last week, but it was kind of costly. Came in the fourth quarter and gave points to Seattle. So good news for Tampa Bay is their Cardinals defense is not good and they don't get takeaways. But the bad news is the Cardinals kind of have this wrecking ball on their defensive line that goes by the name of Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones kind of hasn't gotten a lot of media hype this year, even though he's having a pretty good year. He has 9.5 sacks on the season. That's, if I remember correctly, that's third best in the NFL. He's the third leading sacker in the entire NFL on that Cardinals defensive line. Well, the guy who is number 1 in sacks plays on the Tampa Bay defensive line. Shaquille Barrett is back in the sack column after going most of October without one. He's at 10.5 on the season, still in number 1. So, for both teams, get after the quarterback and try to cause some turnovers. The Cardinals don't turn the ball over very much on offense. They're kind of one of the better teams at it, if I remember correctly. But their quarterback is a rookie, so get after him, force some bad passes, make him throw it away. That should be the goal for the Tampa Bay defensive line. For the Cardinals defensive line, get after Jameis Winston, force some fumbles. He leads the league in fumbles, has for years. That's his issue. Get after it, cause some pressure, make him turn the ball over. This was a hard game for me to pick, in all honesty. I just don't know what I'm getting week to week with Tampa Bay. And the Cardinals really feel like they depend on who they play on whether they're going to be good. The Tampa Bay defense is awful, and their run defense for Tampa Bay is good, and the Cardinals really like to rely on the run. And it sounds like David Johnson, the Cardinals running back who's out for a couple weeks, says he's going to play in this one, and they still have Kenyon Drake. So I don't know what to expect from the Cardinals run game. Like I said, the Tampa Bay run defense is supposed to be good, but Seattle ran for over 100 yards, but that was the only 100-yard rusher that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have given up all season. So I really don't know what to expect from this game, but I'm going to take the Cardinals to win it. I just have more faith in them to be consistent, if that makes any sense. Tampa Bay is so up and down, you just don't know what you're going to get week to week, but the Cardinals, they may be a 3-win team, but they've been consistent in what they've done. So I'm going to take the Cardinals to win this one, but I wouldn't be stunned if Tampa Bay drops like a 35-point burger on the Cardinals and Jameis Winston throws 3 touchdowns and looks great. It just feels like their MO. So moving on to our next one. Got the Lions, 3-4-1 Lions. Yeah, I know. I hate the ties. The 3-4-1 Lions going to Chicago to take on the 3-5 Bears, who have lost 4 straight. Nice little NFC North divisional matchup. Both teams basically have the same record, 3-4-1 and 3-5. It's basically the same record in their division, but they feel so far apart. The Lions have this high-flying passing offense that's one of the better ones in the league, and the Bears are one of the worst offenses in the entire league, by far. The Lions are 5th in total offense with 391.3 yards per game, 3rd in passing offense with 295.3 passing yards per game and average 25.5 points per game, which is 12th best in the league. So they're one of the better offenses, and they're well above average in scoring. In contrast, the Bears' offense is just horrendously bad. They're 27th in points per game, scoring 17.8 points per game. That's what they average. 29th in total offense with 266.8 yards per game, and 30th in passing offense with 186.3 pass yards per game. Simply put, the Bears' offense is horrendous, and it feels like it's getting worse every week as we talk about Mitchell Trubisky. And it's gotten so bad that there was that report, I don't remember who it was from this week, on social media that Trubisky has apparently been walking around the Bills' training facility turning off TVs because they've been carrying so much negative coverage of him. It's getting to a very bad place with the Bears right now. And it feels like they're just kind of almost ignoring the problem that, Mitchell is not playing, Trubisky is not playing good right now. But the good news for the Bears offense, as bad as they have been, they're playing a really bad Lions defense who are 27th in points that they give up with 27. They're averaging giving up 27 points a game. They're 31st in total D with 424.1 yards per game. So this might be great news for the Bears. They may finally get on track and look like a competent offense. I mean, that's how low the bar has been set for the Bears. I'm not telling them to go out and win. I'm just saying come out and look competent. Like you understand and know what you're doing and can complete basic fundamental things. They haven't shown that at all these last couple weeks. And the sad part is, the Bears have a 3-5 record. Most of those losses have been at home this season. They're 1-3 at home so far. And they're in Chicago for this game. And if I just have a gut feeling it's just going to get worse for the Bears. And there's no other way to make it worse than have the Lions come in with their high-flying, fancy, throw it all over the yard offense and just make your offense look dull and boring by comparison. I'm going to take the Lions to win this one. I just have no faith in the Bears right now. They're one of the biggest disappointments in the NFL this season. Not just because of that they're 3-5, and a lot of people said they had potential to win the NFC North and go deep into the playoffs. It's how bad they've looked. They don't even look like a competitive team right now. It's sad. All right, moving on to our next one. Kind of another clunker. You got 6-2 Baltimore, who've won 4 straight, riding high because they beat New England last week. Going to Cincinnati to take on the 0-8 winless Bengals, who are in the driver's seat for the number 1 overall pick. If the draft happened tomorrow, the Bengals have the number 1 overall pick. 0-8, it's the only winless team in the NFL. A lot of headlines about this game, though. The Bengals are starting rookie quarterback Ryan Finley after benching a franchise quarterback Andy Dalton last week during their bye week. Now, if you haven't heard of Ryan Finley, that's okay, because I didn't either when I first heard the news. He's a 4th-round rookie from North Carolina State. Played, if I remember correctly, 5 years. First 2 years at college football, he played at Boise State. Then he transferred to North Carolina State, where he played out his last 3 seasons and started 13 games each year. Finished his career with a 64.2% completion percentage, over 11,000 passing yards, 63 touchdowns, and 30 interceptions. So that's well over a 2-to-1 interception ratio, touchdown to interception ratio, which is good. Yeah, it's good, not bad. It's good. But I think the main thing about this was when the news broke that Ryan Finley was going to be the starter for this game, I heard some scout for the NFL Network compare him to Jared Goff light, like Miller light, which is interesting because Zach Taylor, the Bengals head coach, used to be the quarterback coach for the Los Angeles Rams and was there for Jared Goff for a couple years. So maybe Ryan Finley fits more with what Zach Taylor wants in a quarterback than Andy Dalton does. And maybe that will make their offense better. Because like we've talked about, the Bengals offense is weird in how it will just show up in this weird, like, it'll score 10 points in the second quarter, and that's it for the entire game. That's been their MO all season long. So maybe Ryan Finley can help make that offense a bit better. I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm just saying it's a possibility from what I've heard. So first-round rookie quarterback starting in this game. You would think, and it sounded like A.J. Green was going to play in this game. They had said he's good to go. He's going to practice this week, and it sounds like he'll be ready to start for the first time all season. Then there was a setback, I think, Wednesday in training, and they said he was day-to-day, and it came out the next day that he won't be playing not only in this game, he's now out indefinitely for the rest of the season. So a tough blow for the Bengals, who really wanted to have Ryan Finley basically do an audition for the starting quarterback for next year's job. So A.J. Green is now out indefinitely, and Ryan Finley's going to have to basically make do with what Andy Dalton had to make do with, which is basically nothing. The Bengals defense is atrocious. They're number 32 in total D, giving up 435.8 yards per game. They're the absolute worst rush defense in the league, giving up an average of 177.6 rush yards per game. And that's very bad because the Ravens are basically the best rush offense with Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson. The Bengals are just a great offense in general. I mean, the Ravens are. The Ravens are a great offense in general. They're number 2 in total offense with 427 yards per game. Like I said, they're the number 1 rush offense, averaging 204.9 rush yards per game. Well over 200 rush yards per game. They might run for 500 in this game. That's how bad the Bengals rush defense is. And they're number 1 in points per game, scoring 31.4 points per game. But if there's a silver lining for the Bengals, this is a divisional game, so anything can happen. These are AFC North rivals. But maybe the Ravens are flying a little too high and feeling themselves a little too much after they beat New England last week. Maybe they come out and, they went from playing an undefeated team and beating them last week to playing the only team in the NFL without a win. So maybe they come out and are overlooking the Bengals, and maybe they trip up. That's the only silver lining I can give the Bengals, because they're so bad. So will the Ravens be flat? That's a key thing to watch. But I'm going to take Baltimore to win this one. It just feels like it's way too easy for the Ravens at this point. The Bengals just are bad in areas that the Ravens excel at. This should be a pretty easy win for the Ravens. All right, moving on to our next one. We got the 5-3 Kansas City Chiefs going to Tennessee to take on the 4-5 Titans. So it sounds like Patrick Mahomes will be making his return in this game. He practiced in full this week. I was of the opinion that, Matt Moore has played good enough to, give the Chiefs a chance to win every single week. So there was no reason to rush Mahomes back. But it sounds like he's good to go and ready to play. So Mahomes will return in Tennessee for the Chiefs, and they really need him because the Raiders are right behind the Chiefs. They're 1 game behind in the AFC West. So Chiefs got to start stacking some wins and, start building that gap back up. But Mahomes is coming back to play, a Titans team that's not as terrible as they were a couple weeks ago. The Titans have played better since Ryan Tannehill became their starter. They've averaged 23.3 points per game since he became the starter. That's 16th best in the NFL. So it's right around average. But that's way better than what they were. They were a very much below average offense when Marcus Mariota was in there. Now they're about average with Tannehill. They're competent. They can score some points now. And the Titans defense is good. We've talked about it all year. The Chiefs defense has played better. They have these last couple weeks. And just ask the Minnesota Vikings. They shut down Stephon Diggs. They shut down Dalvin Cook. So Derrick Henry, go out and try to make something happen against his defense. Derrick Henry hasn't broken 100 rush yards in a couple weeks, if I remember correctly. Mainly because he's on my fantasy team and it's killing me to keep him in the lineup. But simply put, with Mahomes coming back, it just feels like the Chiefs are finally starting to get healthy for the first time since the beginning of the season. And I see no reason why the Chiefs shouldn't win this game. I think, just be very cautious and do your absolute best to protect Patrick Mahomes against that very heavy defensive line that the Titans have. But other than that, rely on a run game a bit. But this should be a game that the Chiefs just handle fairly easily. Not easily, but it just has the kind of writing on the wall of maybe this is like a 28-17 kind of game, where the Chiefs score a couple touchdowns in the third or fourth quarter and just run away with it. So I'm going to take the Chiefs to win this one. Even if Matt Moore was playing, in all honesty, I would still take the Chiefs. I like the Titans, and I think they're better than what they were a couple weeks ago, but I just think that Chiefs team is just too much to handle right now. All right, moving on. We got an NFC South division rivalry game. The 1-7 Falcons, who have lost 6 straight. Oh God, going to New Orleans to take on the 7-1 Saints, who have won 6 straight. Both of these teams are coming off of a bye, and this is a game where we got a couple players coming back from injury. It sounds like Matt Ryan, the Falcons quarterback, is going to be good to go. Despite being a 1-7 operation, the Falcons have a fairly good passing offense that can move the ball with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. Austin Hooper, their tight end, has been having a really great season that nobody's talking about. The bad news for that is Matt Ryan's coming back for the Falcons. Alvin Kamara is coming back for the Saints. Latavius Murray has done great in relief for the Saints in their running game. I think he's had over 100 yards in each of the games he started. Alvin Kamara is a different type of monster. So I don't know if he's going to be on a pitch count in this game or what have you, but that's big news for the Saints that they get their amazing running back to come back and play in this one. We haven't seen this Falcons team in, over a week, and everybody's kind of, forgotten about them because they're so bad. This defense is still awful. They're 23rd in total D, giving up 379.5 points per yards per game, and they're 30th in points that they give up. They're averaging giving up 31.3 points per game. That's awful. And if you've watched any Falcons football, you see guys are wide open constantly, defenders constantly blowing assignments. It's just really, really bad Falcons defense. But, they're coming off a bye week, so maybe they might look a bit better against the division rival. I don't see it, though. The Falcons have a tendency to start slow, and the games are, already out of hand at halftime. And I have a feeling that's what this is going to be like. Drew Brees looked great against an awful Cardinals team in his first game back, and now he's coming off a bye week, and Kamara's going to be there. This game could get ugly really fast, and I'm going to take the Saints to win this one. It sounds like they're going to keep Dan Quinn for the rest of the year. But hey, wouldn't it be crazy if the Falcons won this one? It would be crazy, wouldn't it? I don't think it'll happen, but Saints win this one. Moving on. We're going to New York for the Battle of New York. You got the 2-7 Giants, who have lost 5 straight, are going up against their rival. Is it a rivalry? I don't know. They play in the same stadium in MetLife. I'm talking about the 1-7 Jets, who have lost 3 straight. We only get this game once every 4 years, and this edition of it looks to be awful. Like I said, it's a battle for New York. You get bragging rights for 4 years because you beat up a team that either has 1 win or 2 wins. Yippee. The Jets are awful. There's no way around it. Their offense is the worst in the league. They're numbered 32, so dead last in total offense, with averaging 223.5 yards per game. And they're tied for dead last in points that they score at 12 points per game. That's awful. The Giants aren't much better, though. They're 24th in total offense with 326.8 yards per game, and they're averaging 19.6 points per game. So it's not a lot better. But in contrast, the Giants' defense is hideous. They're 28th in total D, giving up 391.4 yards per game, so just a shade under 400 yards a game that they're averaging giving up. And they're giving up averaging 28.3 points per game. That's 29th worst in the NFL. So that's that's 4 games. That's like 3 above dead last. You're 3rd worst. That's bad. But as bad as the Giants team has played, they still have talent. They got Golden Tate, they got Saquon. Daniel Jones is a rookie, but he's showed promise. He's got to stop the turnovers. He's tied for the league lead in fumbles. Got to cut the turnovers out, my dude. And you know what? The Giants have to get Saquon Barkley rolling in this game. He has not, been the same kind of running back since he came back from the ankle injury. I don't know if it's a scheme thing or he's not feeling himself. I'm not quite sure what it is. He was a pretty good running back, before the injury happened. He was, doing what felt like over 100 yards each game, and he hasn't got anywhere close to that. He had 26 yards, rushing yards against the Cowboys, for crying out loud. So the Giants have to find a way to get Saquon rolling, in my opinion. I'm going to take the Giants to win this one. The Jets are just awful. There's no way around it. It's gone from them being a frisky playoff team at the beginning of the year to, oh, they've got a lot of injuries, to, oh, this is bad. Oh, this isn't just bad. This is like historically awful bad. Like, this might get a coach fired after 1 year bad. It's that atrociously bad for the Jets. So I'm going to take the Giants to win this one. It'll probably be not a low scoring game, but it'll be very close probably in the fourth quarter because both teams are shooting themselves in the foot so much. But I'm going to take the Giants to win this one. Moving on to the first of our late games. We got this team right now is white hot. They got a big win last week. And they're going on the road. I'm talking, you know them, you love them. I'm talking about the 1-7 Miami Dolphins riding high after their first win of the season, going to Indianapolis to take on the 5-3 Colts. So, big question in this one: will Jacoby Brissett play? He suffered that MCL injury in the game against Pittsburgh, and they said there's a potential that he could play in this one. Brian Hoyer played well enough against a pretty good Steelers defense, threw for almost 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. So if Brissett can't go, I think I'd be okay with Brian Hoyer starting this game. I have confidence in Frank Reich and the rest of that offensive coaching staff to draw up a game plan that can help them maximize what Brian Hoyer can do. They've done it all year long with Jacoby. Why can't they do it with Brian Hoyer? And the good news is the Dolphins are one of the worst defenses in the league. So you have that going for you. But here's the thing. The Colts are the only team in the league. The only team in the league where every game that they have played has come down to one possession. Let that sink in for a moment. Every game that they have played. So no matter how bad their opponent is in the Dolphins, this game is probably going to come down to which team has the ball last, sort of thing. Not that it'll be high scoring, but that's just how the Colts have played all season long. Bad news for the Dolphins, though. Wide receiver Preston Williams, who leads the team in receptions and yards, is now out for the year. He suffered a knee injury in the game against Pittsburgh. So they're going to have to have some guys to step up in that locker room. But here's a real question for the Dolphins. I wonder if anybody in that front office is starting to panic. They beat the Jets and they won a game, so they're 1-7 now, but that's kind of bad news because if the draft happened tomorrow, the Dolphins would be picking third. No, they would be picking fourth, if I remember correctly, because the Bengals would get 1, the Jets would get the 2 pick, Washington would get the 3rd pick, and then the Dolphins would get the 4th pick. So I wonder if there's any kind of internal conversation to, hey, I know everybody felt great about the win last week, but let's kick this into high gear. We really want Tua Tagovailoa at 1. I'm just saying, I really think it's a funny thing worth thinking about. They tried so hard to be a tank team. They win a game, and now it feels like if things hold at the way they currently are, the Dolphins could not only miss Tua Tagovailoa at 1, they could miss Justin Herbert going to a different team. I just think it's really funny, worth thinking about. Putting all that aside, I'm going to take the Colts to win this one. I just think they have a much better roster than Miami, and this game will come down to late in the fourth quarter and one possession. I almost guarantee it. It's not that the Colts are a bad team and the Dolphins are a better team. It's just how the Colts play football. It's just what they do. But I'm going to take the Colts to win it. Moving on, I think this game could actually be pretty fun, this next one. You got the 5-3 Panthers going to Green Bay to take on the 7-2 Packers. this game could be very fun. Like I said, Green Bay's defense, we praised it the first month of the season for how great it looked, how it was sacking quarterbacks and doing everything it can to stop other teams. It started off hot, but it's really regressed, this last month. They ranked 26th in total D with 382.9 yards per game and 24th in rush D with 127.7 rush yards per game. And that's not what you want to be giving up on the ground when you're playing a team that has Christian McCaffrey. For the Panthers. But for the Packers offense, they really need to bounce back and show some grit here because they were just shut down and looked bad against a Chargers team last week. Aaron Rodgers said it was a case of humble pie. Well, you're going to need to prove it because the Panthers defense is no slouch. They're one of the better pass rushing teams in the league, and they're one of the better pass defenses overall in the league. They have the 9th best pass D with 227 pass yards per game. That's 9th best in the league. So they're no slouch, in my opinion. So Rodgers and Aaron Jones are going to have to kind of, put it together and have a good game because they didn't last week. They had like 100 total yards going into the fourth quarter. That's not good. No Aaron Rodgers team has ever done that. So kind of get it together now, Green Bay. But for the Panthers, it's the Kyle Allen show now. Cam Newton is done for the year. So Kyle Allen, go out and make a statement. Show these guys that you're worth keeping around, not just as a backup quarterback, but as a starter. Plant your flag, Kyle Allen. And what better way to do that than going into Lambeau Field in a late afternoon game? A lot of people are going to be watching this one. And you beat up Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau Field, a 7-2 Packers team. Hey, what better way to plant your flag than that? And you look good, in my opinion. But I know I said it's a Kyle Allen show. It's really the Christian McCaffrey show. He runs that entire offense. It all flows through him, both rushing and receiving. The only hope Green Bay has, they have to stop him, bottleneck him. It's not impossible, I promise you, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did it twice this season. Granted, the Panthers won even when they stopped Christian McCaffrey and slowed him down. I'm just saying, it's not impossible to stop this young man. As crazy and aerodynamic and exciting as he seems, he is stoppable. It can be done. I just don't think the Packers defense can do it. They've struggled to stop the run all season long, and their defense has really regressed. And that defense could really use a statement win. But if it comes down to, let's say, the fourth quarter and it requires a quarterback to make a couple big-time throws, I just have a feeling Aaron Rodgers can do that better than Kyle Allen can. This game is going to come down to, these guys having to make big-time clutch throws. And, Kyle Allen has stepped up before and won games, in my opinion. I would point to the game Carolina played against Houston where he had a big-time late drive. I just trust Aaron Rodgers more. And that's why I'm taking the Packers to win this one. I think a lot of people are, raising alarm bells about the Packers after one game against a bad team. I think the Packers are still a good team on offense. I'm really starting to question their defense, though. They really need to stand up and puff their chest a little bit. This isn't. I think we might have overhyped that defense after a month. When teams are still figuring each other out and the Packers defense looked good, and they haven't looked good since. So I'm going to take the Packers to win it, though. I just have too much faith in Rodgers. It's in Lambeau. It's November. It just has the feeling of a Green Bay win all over it. All right, moving on. The last of our late afternoon games, we got the 5-3 Rams, who are coming off a bye, going to Pittsburgh to take on the 4-4 Steelers, who are really feeling themselves right now after winning 3 straight. And we haven't talked about the Rams in a while. It feels like everybody's kind of forgotten about them because, they had the bye week. Now, despite all the talk about the Rams, and questioning their offense and all this and that and saying that they've lost a step, they're still a good offense in my opinion. They rank 10th in total offense with 384.5 yards per game, and they're averaging 26.8 points a game. That's tied for 5th best in the league. So they're still a good offense, even if they are extremely one-dimensional and can only pass the football and have no run game. But in contrast, the Steelers, they're the exact opposite of that. Their bread and butter for the Steelers and how they're winning isn't their offense; it's their defense. Their defense is second best in the league with turnovers. They've gotten 22 on the year. So that's how they're winning games. They're getting turnovers and they're scoring off those turnovers, not necessarily with the offense, but their defense can score touchdowns. Pittsburgh has the number 10 pass defense in the league with 228 pass yards per game. Minkah Fitzpatrick has been an absolute gift for that defense. I really questioned that trade when it happened earlier in the season. Now, I don't care what the Dolphins get with that draft pick. That was a great trade the Steelers made. Minkah Fitzpatrick has been a revelation for that defense. It feels like he's making plays every single week to help that team. People are really starting to buy into Pittsburgh. People are saying, this team's got enough stuff to make the wild card around. I'm like, I don't know about that. Their defense is good enough, but their offense really needs to show me more with their quarterback, who still feels like he's dinking and dunking his way down the field. A dump-off kind of quarterback. I'm just saying, I don't know if James Conner is going to play in this game. It sounds like he's still hurt. So we'll see what the Pittsburgh running game looks like in this one. But in contrast, I think the Rams' offense is still good. Their defense is okay. The Steelers' defense is really good. Their offense is just okay, kinda. It really depends on who they're playing. But I'm going to take the Rams to win in this one. Just have the Sean McVay. I just don't trust, Mason Rudolph to go out there and put up points. I just don't. That's not a slight. I just don't. But I really do believe that Steelers defense is good. Maybe they win, 7 or 8 games. But, the offense is going to have to step up at some point for the Steelers. All right, moving on to our Sunday Night Football game. This should actually be a very fun game. Got the 6-3 Minnesota Vikings going all the way to Arlington, Texas, to take on the 5-3 Cowboys, who have won 2 straight. This is a matchup between really, really good offenses in the NFL. Dallas has the number 1 total offense with 436.8 yards per game that they're averaging. The number 4 passing offense, averaging 287.5 pass yards per game. And number 4 rush offense with 149.3 rush yards per game. Oh, and they're also averaging 28.4 points per game. That's 4th best in the league. So what I'm saying is the Dallas offense is good. In contrast, the Vikings have the number 8 total offense with 386.7 yards per game. Number 3 rush offense with 153 rush yards per game. And they're averaging 26 points per game, which is 11th best in the league. So you're getting 2 offenses that know how to move the ball and put up points, is what I'm getting at. All right, so their offenses are good. So the question becomes, how do we separate these teams? Well, let's look at the defenses then. The Vikings defense did get a little exposed against Kansas City, in my opinion. We normally aren't used to, a 91-yard rush touchdown run on this Vikings defense. But I still think they're good. The Vikings defense is 7th in total D with 320.9 yards per game. They're 8th in passing D with 225.1 pass yards per game. And 9th in rush D with averaging giving up 95.8 rush yards per game. So they're in almost every category, they're top 10 defense according to ESPN stats. All right, so that's the Vikings defense. So what about the Cowboys defense? I've been hard on them all season because I don't think they're good. And that's been the heel for this defense. This team is their defense, so what about theirs? The Cowboys defense is getting better, though. They've played much better these last 2 weeks against Philadelphia and the Giants. I almost called them the Jets. The Giants. The Cowboys are 11th in rush D, giving up 97.3 rush yards per game. They're 7th in pass D with 220.9 pass yards per game. And 6th in total D with 318.1 yards per game. So their defenses are close to each other is what I'm saying. They also give up almost the same exact points per game. The Vikings give up 17.6 points per game. The Cowboys give up 17.8 points per game. So their offenses are close to each other in the numbers they've put up. Their defenses are closer to each other than the numbers they put up. So how are we going to separate these teams? Who's going to miss this game? It sounds like Adam Thielen, the Vikings wide receiver, might not play. Well, guess what? It sounds like Amari Cooper, the Dallas wide receiver, might not play. So it just feels like these teams are almost identical to each other in what they want to do. So let's look at the teams they've beaten. The question I raised on Tuesday's podcast was, can the Cowboys beat a good team? They're 1-2 so far this season against teams that have a record of 500 or better. That lone win coming against the Eagles. The Vikings are a good team, and they're coming to your town in a primetime game. This is about as good a time as any to show that you can beat a good team and not just the bad ones. For the Cowboys, just don't start sloppy like you did Monday night. It feels like a common trend that, the Cowboys are starting to shoot themselves in the foot to start games and claw their way back. Just don't start sloppy and everything should be okay for the Cowboys. For the Vikings, my concerns are a bit more metaphorical than, stats. I'm going to lay this out for you guys. This is a primetime game. The entire nation will be watching. It's Sunday Night Football. The Vikings' opponent is a 5-3 team who's in first place in their division and had Super Bowl aspirations to start the year, so a team with a lot of hype. The Vikings are on the road. This feels like it has a Kirk Cousins implosion written all over it. It just does. I love Kirk Cousins. I truly do. I've been on his bandwagon for, 4 or 5 years at this point. But it just feels like it has a game where Kirk Cousins is going to come out, complete 13 of 34 in passing, throw 3 interceptions, barely have 100 yards. It just has that kind of Kirk Cousins game written all over it. And I know it's a narrative that he hates, but it's a narrative for a reason. Kirk Cousins has struggled in games, primetime games. It's just a fact. What is his record? It's 6-18 in primetime games, and he usually plays pretty bad. It's going to be interesting to see, is Kirk Cousins going to look good in this game? It'll be very interesting to see. And because of those doubts that I have about Kirk Cousins and this Vikings team showing up in primetime, I'm going to go with the Cowboys. This was the hardest game for me to pick this weekend. Absolutely. I went back and forth for an hour trying to decide what winner made me feel more comfortable. And I'm always almost overtly pessimistic about my team, the Cowboys. I don't know. I just can't trust the Vikings and Kirk Cousins in a big moment. I just can't do it. So I'm going to take the Cowboys to win Sunday night. But I wouldn't be stunned if the Vikings show up and, look competitive against this Cowboys team and maybe steal it. I don't think it'll be an upset. Either way, if either team wins, I don't think it's an upset. But for the Vikings, just show up and, be competitive. Don't shrivel away in a big moment. That's all I'm saying. Do that and I'll be happy for you, Minnesota. Moving on to our last game. This is probably game of the weekend, in my opinion. The 7-2 Seahawks, who have won 2 straight, going to San Francisco to take on the only unbeaten team left in the NFL, the 49ers. A nice old-fashioned NFC West showdown that we've been waiting weeks for, people. The 49ers have the number 1 total D in the league, giving up 241 yards per game. Number 1 pass D, giving up 138.1 pass yards per game. And the number 2 scoring D, giving up 12.8 points per game. Otherwise known as the 49ers defense is fantastic. There's no way getting around it. In contrast, the Seahawks offense is pretty good, especially their pass offense. The Seahawks are the number 4 total offense in the league with 395 yards per game. Number 9th in passing O with 263.3 pass yards per game. And 8th in rushing offense, averaging 131.7 rush yards per game. And they're scoring 27.6 points per game. This Seahawks offense is good, especially when Russell Wilson is balling out like he did last week when he scored 5 touchdowns. They have the potential to be dangerous every week. The 49ers are no slouch either offensively. They're 7th in total offense, averaging 390.3 yards per game, and they're the number 2 rush offense, averaging 171.1 rush yards per game. They're also averaging 29.4 points per game scoring on offense. 49ers are not a slouch offensively. As much as people want to say Jimmy Garoppolo is just a game manager, he's got Emmanuel Sanders and George Kittle now. Don't be overlooking that 49ers pass offense. That's all I'm saying. But if there is a hole in both of these, in that 49ers defense, it's their run game, their rush defense. The 49ers rank 14th in rush defense, averaging giving up 102.9 rush yards per game. And you're thinking, oh, that's okay, But Seattle ranks 13th in rush defense, so they're right by each other in terms of how they stop the run. Seattle gives up on average 102.7 rush yards per game. So, they got 2 good offenses going against each other, and their stats are, around each other. They're similar to each other, so the 49ers defense is really good. So, in comparison, how does the Seahawks defense measure up? That's where you find the weak link. The Seattle Seahawks defense is absolutely a weak link, and it's going to hold this team back. They're 24th in total defense, and they're averaging giving up over 380.8 yards per game. That's not good, and we've seen a lot. For crying out loud, they made the Tampa Bay Buccaneers look good in Seattle last week. That's how bad you need. I'm not saying the Seahawks defense is bad. They're not good either. They're in that weird, kind of meh zone. That's where the Seahawks are operating right now. And because I've yet to see the Seahawks defense really step up and, assert themselves this year, I'm taking the 49ers to win one on Monday Night Football. Those are the first of 2 games that these guys are going to play over the next couple weeks. I'm taking the 49ers to win one, primetime, Monday Night Football in California. Sounds good to me. So, that's it for the preview show. Hey, we got it in under an hour. That's great. So we just previewed all the games that are happening in Week 10 this weekend. So the next time we talk will be Tuesday. We'll recap all the games we just previewed and any news or any major things that have happened. And we'll also preview next Thursday night's game between the Browns and Steelers on Thursday Night Football. So that's it for today, everybody. I hope you have a great football weekend. Enjoy your Week 10 action, and I'll see you all Tuesday. Bye.